All right, so my plan is to talk about WMS. WMS stands for the Watershed Modeling System. And, you know, did you write these did you change these course objectives, Aaron? You probably don't remember, you were working too late. But anyway, so WMS is used to create, you can use WMS, I mean, you don't have to, but I would suggest using WMS to create a GSSHA model. And the way you do it, I mean, WMS, you can do everything inside of WMS that you need to do to create a basic GSSHA model. And WMS is used for getting your elevation data. I mean, you can get elevation data from outside of WMS, but you can also get it from inside of WMS. You get land use, soil data, and just all the data. You can even get some precipitation data, get all the data you need inside of WMS. Then you can create your grid, which you've seen GSSHA grids in previous slides. And then you can build your stream network, your stream model that's part of GSSHA, and then just run GSSHA. You can run GSSHA from WMS. You can also run it from just outside of WMS. Either way, if you run it from WMS, it's a little bit easier because it brings up a window. Anyway, we're going to talk about that, and this is just stuff. You know, I'm going to ignore that slide, but we're going to talk about how you would create a GSSHA model inside of WMS. And this is the WMS window. And the main thing about the WMS window to keep in mind is this Project Explorer on the left. There's the Project Explorer. Let's see. Laser pointer. That's what I want. So this is the Project Explorer right here, this window. This is all the data that's you have inside WMS. So WMS, if you've ever used something like ArcGIS, or there's also a program I use, it's an open source GIS called QGIS. I call it QGIS. Some people might call it QGIS. Anyway, if you ever use something like that, it has something similar where all your data is located on the left side of the screen in a window, and you can just tell what's inside WMS from this window. This is the graphics window, so any interaction with WMS you're going to be doing in this graphics window. And then these are the tools along the side here. So any tool without an arrow means you're going to create, it's going to create something. Any tool with an arrow, so like these tools here, are used for selecting something. So tools without arrows are usually used for creating things, tools with arrows for selecting things. These are called the static tools. These are used for moving your view around inside of WMS. And then there's just some other tools and buttons and stuff at the top that do different things. And then this is whatever you have selected. It's going to show information about whatever you have selected on this side of the window. This is the property window. And so like I say, this is the Project Explorer. This is where all of your data is located. The other thing to keep in mind about WMS is if I go back here to this slide, there's these modules. And the modules, depending on which module I have selected, it's going to change these dynamic tools in this toolbar, and it's also going to change the menu that shows up. So the modules change the tools and the menus. And there's different modules that do different things. Like one of the modules you're going to be working with if you're doing GSSHA modeling, you're going to be working with this module. This is the 2D grid module, and we'll be talking about that. You'll also be working a lot with the map module. All the models in WMS use the map module somehow. So these are the different modules, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about that right now, but you're going to be working with these different modules as you go through the workshops in WMS. So I have a question, a little quiz question. Maybe somebody knows the answer. Editing DEM data is done in which of the following modules? And I guess you could refer back to the previous slide. So which of these modules would be used for editing DEM? And DEM stands for Digital Elevation Models. So it's the terrain data module, right? Would be the answer. So the answer is B, the terrain module. Okay, there's also one thing about WMS is it has a bunch of different display options. So if you're not seeing something, it could be because the display of something is turned off, and you might need to turn that on. And these display options, you get to that from the display menu, which is in each of the modules has a display menu. Go to display options, and then all those options are located in this window. You can turn things on and off if you need to. Then it has zoom, pan, and rotate tools that are used to change your view, and you'll learn how all those tools work as we go through the workshops. So WMS can be used to import background data, and by background data, I'm talking about. Have you guys had experience with GIS data? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about with background data. There's different GIS formats that are supported by WMS, and it supports almost all the common GIS formats. So like images, like you might have a TIFF image or a JPEG image that might be geo-referenced, and you might want to bring that in. Supports different formats for elevation data sets. And there's a couple of different types of elevation data that WMS also supports. And these are the three main types. So there's DEMs, which kind of are, in WMS, those are just gridded elevation data sets. TINs, triangulated irregular networks, which means just as abbreviation we use for that is TINs. And that's just scattered XYZ points that are connected by triangles. And WMS supports TINs. It also supports LiDAR data, which is light detection and ranging data, where you fly an airplane or something over an area and get a whole bunch of elevation points. And that's it supports LiDAR data sets. And it also has tools in WMS to just import data from WMS. We're going to go through some of those later. The goal of WMS is to create a basin, a watershed from a digital map. So here I have this is just a topo map, and maybe some elevation data, and WMS can be used to automatically determine the watershed boundaries for that elevation map. And that's kind of one of the biggest things, the main reason that we have WMS is to get those watershed boundaries, to get the stream locations. And once we get that, we can make pretty pictures like this of the watershed and overlay it with like a topo map, or if you have an aerial photograph or something, and figure out what's going on in different parts of the watershed. And there's these get data tools that you're going to be using some. And these tools can be used to get data from the internet, from different web services that allow you to download elevation and land use and just aerial photographs and things like that. You can get all that stuff from these tools from inside of WMS. You can also, so a lot of we talked earlier about lumped parameter models. We're not going to break watersheds up into subbasins like this model, but you can break watersheds up in WMS into a bunch of subbasins and run lumped parameter models. In this course, of course, we're going to be using GSSHA, where we're not going to be working with a bunch of subbasins. We're going to be working with usually a single watershed and just turn it into a grid from inside of WMS. All right, now you may not know the answer, but a lot of times if you have the option D, all of the above, it's usually all of these things. So that's how are basins delineated in WMS? A, importing GIS or CAD files. B, manually digitizing boundaries and streams using scanned base maps. So that means like just manually drawing in your watershed boundaries. C, using digital elevation data to automate the procedure. And D, all of the above. So the answer, what do you think the answer is?
D, all of the above.
Okay, Chuck, you're right. The correct answer is D, all of the above. So in WMS, you can import your basins from GIS or CAD files. You can manually create your boundaries if you want, or you can just automatically produce your watershed boundaries from digital elevation data. All of the above. There's the answer. WMS can be used to compute two classes of parameters in your watershed. You need both of these parameters if you're doing both of these classes if you're doing a watershed model. One class I call geometric parameters. So geometric parameters are things like the area of each subbasin in your watershed, the slopes, and things that can be computed from elevation data. WMS computes geometric parameters. The other class of parameters, and so it takes these parameters and it puts them in your model. That's what this is showing. So this is HMS, the HMS interface inside of WMS. And WMS will take these parameters it computes and put those parameters inside of your HMS, or in our case, the GSSHA model. And so you don't need to transfer the data to the model, it just puts them in there. The other class of parameters, so like I say, there's two classes. The other class of parameters are what I call hydrologic parameters. And hydrologic parameters are parameters where we have to have some kind of data besides elevation data to get the information. Sometimes all you need is some kind of elevation data, but one example of a hydrologic parameter would be a parameter called the time of concentration that's used by models, lumped parameter models use the time of concentration. And so WMS will help you compute the time of concentration. This is the window where you can compute the time concentration or the lag time, but they're kind of interchangeable. It also helps you compute other parameters, and one of those parameters is called the curve number. But what we'll do is we go through the GSSHA course. So it also helps you compute rainfall, but as we go through the GSSHA course, we're going to use some of these tools that are used to compute the curve number to define what we call an index map. We're going to be talking about this later, but you'll define something called an index map where you define different land use areas in your watershed and or different soil type areas and define parameters for each of those areas. So GSSHA is a little bit different because you don't compute necessarily like a time concentration. You don't compute a curve number in GSSHA. but you do need to define some parameters for each cell of your watershed somehow. The way you do that is by defining index maps and then what we call mapping tables in your watershed. Then once you've defined that, you can run your model, review the results. In WMS will, in GSHA, it'll give you a hydrograph wherever you tell WMS to give you a hydrograph. You're telling GSHA to give you a hydrograph at different locations. You can get a hydrograph anywhere along your stream or really in your overland areas also in your watershed. And then WMS will show you hydrographs anywhere you define a hydrograph along your stream. So this is just showing pretty pictures. So in WMS, we've taken this watershed, defined the watershed, and we're looking at the watershed in a three-dimensional view here. Another feature of WMS that you could use is it has an interface to a model called HEC-RAS, which is a 1D hydraulic model, but GSHA also has a 1D hydraulic model that's similar to the results of HEC-RAS. So I guess in our course, we're going to be mainly using GSHA to do the hydraulics and the hydrology and the hydraulics along the stream. And the workflow, so we're going to look at this diagram throughout the course. The way you would normally create a model is first you collect your data, then you delineate your watershed, and there's the main way that we're going to be delineating watersheds is using the DEM-based method. And then we compute our hydrologic parameters that we need to compute. So get our land use and soil information, whatever else we need to compute, we're going to do that using this model development step. And then we run our model. It's the model simulation step. And we can look at the results.
Chris, I have a question. If I had LiDAR, would I take my LiDAR in and make a DEM from it? Can I do it straight from the LiDAR to building a watershed?
So yeah, so the question is, if you have LiDAR data, would you convert that LiDAR to a DEM? And so the answer is, you probably would want to convert it to a DEM and use the DEM for your watershed model instead of, there's not really an option in WMS to use the LiDAR directly. You can either use a DEM or a TIN to get your elevation data, and I would actually always just use a DEM. Okay, and I'm probably not going to do a demonstration, but we're going to do a demonstration later, I think, where we're going to demonstrate how you would use WMS to delineate a watershed and do a GSHA model. We do have a workshop that goes along with this introduction lecture, and so in the workshop, you're going to be just looking at some data inside of WMS, kind of learning the process of working with WMS and learning the tools and stuff inside of WMS. And so that's kind of the workshop.